to show you how to make homemade pasta noodles. This is really, really easy. And you can do this with homegrown, fresh milled wheat, or you can do it with store-bought flours. Either way, it's really pretty easy. And I'm going to show you how to do it. All you're going to need to do this is some eggs. And of course we have chickens, so we have an abundance of yard eggs. Yard eggs always taste better and they're better for you. So if you have access, then great. But if not, you can use store-bought eggs. You're going to need a flour. Traditionally, pastas are made with a kind of coarse, thicker flour. So if you're home milling, you can set it to a coarser grind, but you don't have to. You can grind it just like you would for your bread flour. It's going to work either way. You're going to need a little bit of olive oil, some salt, and something to dry your noodles on. This is a noodle drying rack. These things are pretty cheap, maybe like 20 bucks, and they really save you a lot of space, and they're great for drying a lot of pasta at one time. So if you're going to do this regularly, I would recommend you get one, but if not, you can always just tie a string between two chairs or whatever and just hang them over the string to dry. But they're going to have to dry. So all you need to know for making your own pasta at home is that it's going to be a 2-to-1 ratio. That means for every 1 cup of flour, you're going to need 2 eggs. So for a single person, the serving would be 2 eggs, 1 cup of flour. Sprinkle a little bit of salt and just a touch of olive oil. You don't want a lot of oil in your pasta dough, because when you go to run it through your noodle machine to stretch it out, if it's too slick, the wheels are just going to turn, they're going to spin, and it's not going to pull that dough through. You actually need kind of a dry dough. So you don't want to put much oil at all. For a normal size family, you're going to want to double that portion. So you'll be doing 4 eggs and 2 cups of flour, dash of salt, and just a touch of olive oil. I'm cooking a large amount because we're doing a function at the church, and so I'm making homemade lasagna with fresh noodles and fresh cheese and all of this, and I'll show you how to make all of those ingredients separately if you want to do that. So I'm going to actually quadruple that portion. So I will be doing double of the double. So I will have 8 eggs and 4 cups of flour. So again, traditionally, the way we did this growing up as kids is we just made a pile of flour on the counter. You make the little volcano in the middle, you crack your eggs in it, and you start folding the dough in. You can do that. I find it's messy and hard to clean up. So I just get a really big bowl, and I do the same thing. So I'm going to start with my flour. This is fresh milled. I just milled this flour, but again, you can use any old all-purpose flour from the store. If you're fresh milling at home with home milled flour, you're going to want to use hard winter wheat for this. The soft wheats won't work. You need a hard wheat. So hard winter white wheat does the best, and you can do the whole white wheat without any separation, and it will taste pretty much just like a regular noodle. So you get a healthy whole wheat noodle that tastes just like a white pasta noodle. This is hard white wheat. So I'm going to go with 1 cup. And it's still kind of warm because I just milled it. Alright, and so with my flour, I got my 4 cups. I'm going to make that little volcano like we would do if it was on a flat surface. You make that little indentation in the middle, and into that, I'm going to double the amount of eggs. So there's 4 cups, so how many eggs am I going to put? 8 eggs. So 1, 8. And I see there's a little tiny piece of shell in there. Here's the trick if you don't know it for getting shell out of your eggs. Don't try to fish it out with your fingers as they are. You'll never catch it. But if you just wet your fingers, put a little water on your finger, you can reach right in and you'll grab it every time. No problem. Alright. Again, you don't need to make this big of a portion, but noodles do keep. That's kind of the whole point. It was a way for people before refrigerators to be able to preserve their eggs and their wheat. So you can make large batches. Since you're making a mess, do it all at one time. Make a large batch and put some of those noodles up. Get you a Tupperware noodle container or something and you can store it. And you're going to put a little salt. I really don't have a measurement on this because when you're doing a single portion, it's such a minute, it would be, just a little dash of salt. But since I'm doing a larger portion with 4 cups, I'm going to put probably about a half a teaspoon's equivalent. of salt in there. And a cool thing about this is you could actually season these noodles if you wanted. You could put garlic powder, onion powder. You could put all kinds of stuff in it to give it more of a flavor. And now the olive oil. For this amount, I'm going to be putting like maybe a half a teaspoon's worth. You don't want a lot. Again, if you were doing a single batch serving, you would put just a little tiny drizzle. I'm going to put a little bit more because I got 4 times the amount, but I still don't want very much olive oil. Because I did that one time and I put too much and I had so much trouble because it just kept sliding in the mixer and it wouldn't mix. Alright, so now at this point, I'm just going to take my fingers. You're going to get messy with pasta. Now you can actually put this in a bread machine or a dough mixer and it will mix it up for you pretty well. But all you're really going to normally do is fold it in. Take your outsides, fold it in, and work the mess. Fold it in, work the mess. Alright, now, you might think this dough is too dry, but you want it a little dry. Especially with home meal, because there's natural oils still in the whole wheat when you home meal. It's going to actually kind of moisten up a little bit over time. And so, regardless of home milled or not, you don't want to make this thing too wet because, like I said, it's got to be able to grab in the dough machine, the press, as you roll it through. If it's too wet, if it's too oily, your pins, your wheels, they're just going to slide over it and it's not going to pull it. So I just keep working that dough to force that rest of that flour in. If you find that it really is absolutely too dry, you can put a little drizzle of oil, but for the most part you want it kind of tough. In essence, when you were a child and you made homemade glue with egg whites and flour, this is what you were making. You were making pasta. Which again is another great tip, that as soon as you finish making your pasta, clean all of your equipment and your counter surfaces immediately, because when it dries, it does turn into glue and it is hard and you can't get it off hardly. It's so hard to get clean, so just clean it immediately. Alright, looks good. Your dough ball should look something like this. It's not, when I touch it, it's not sticking to me and rising up. But it's still not soft like bread dough would be. Alright, so once you get it at this stage, you're going to put it in your bowl. This is another reason I like to do it in a bowl. Makes it easy. You want to cover it with a clean towel and let it rest for 30 minutes. Alright, for this part, if you're going to be making lasagna noodles or ravioli, you don't really need a machine. You can do it with a rolling pin. You're just going to have to roll it out really, really thin. But of course the easiest way to make pasta is with a pasta maker, and all it really is a press. It's just 2 rolling wheels that are going to press and help to stretch those noodles, and then of course we'll replace the attachment and cut them, and I'll show you how all that works. But once your dough has set for a little while, you want to keep it covered because you don't want it to dry out prematurely. So what you're going to want to do is get you a little bit of your flour and flour a surface. You don't need a huge surface, but we do need to flour a little bit of the surface so that we can stretch this out a little bit. So we don't want it sticking to the table. I'm going to go ahead and put a little flour out. Let me move this out the way so you can see a little better. Alright. Then we're going to take a piece of dough. I broke a piece of dough off and I'll leave the rest covered so it doesn't dry out. Right? And you can see how the dough has kind of mixed throughout the time that it's sat in that 30 minutes. It's like become more together. So that's part of the reason in letting it rest, letting all of the moisture kind of spread evenly. So I'm going to take that, put a little flour on both sides. You don't really have to do this step. You can just start working it through the machine, but this will actually save you a lot of time on the work. Alright, I'm going to roll it, kind of get you a uniform thickness to start with. This tool comes with your pasta machine. You can use this because it's set to a width. You can use this once you roll your dough to cut out an even strip. Of course, again, you don't technically have to do that. I'll put this dough aside because we'll rework that. But it does kind of like make the process a bit easier. All right, there's settings on this, 7 through 1. 7 being the thickest, so you're gonna start in the middle as much as possible. You're gonna start on your thickest. And roll it out. You're gonna want to take it a little thinner and work it some more. Alright, see how it's stretching? Getting a good stretch on that. And honestly, I like to take them and fold them a few times and run them through again. Help to really get it mixed well. Helps to fatten it out a little bit too. Alright, thin it down. And if you're making fettuccine, you don't want to thin it out too much. If you're making lasagna, you don't need to thin it out. If you're making spaghetti, you want to get it down to however you want. If you like the number 3 spaghetti, then dial it down to the number 3 thickness. If you like angel hair, then get it all the way down. I'm going to show you. Run it one more time. Take it down to about size 2. Alright, this is getting pretty thin. Now, I'm going to cut this into, let's go with 3 pieces. And I'm going to show you a couple of different kind of noodles. I don't want to do a whole lot of them because I'm not cooking that. This is the way your attachments work. There's a little hook, and you just slide it right onto your base. Stick your wheel into whichever end you're going to use. Now this would say be our angel hair pasta. Alright, let's see how it's coming out. You're going to take them, separate them if need be. Alright, the next piece I'm going to show you, this would be like your fettuccine noodles. So you just feed it through the fettuccine cutter and catch it and pull it out. Of course, you would do these a lot longer. I'm just doing little pieces to demonstrate because I'm not cooking this right now, so I don't want to make a whole lot of them. Oop. Take the focus out. Some of them you may have to kind of separate a little bit. For the most part, they're going to come apart, especially when you cook them. And now we're just going to hang them on the pasta rack to dry. And you've got homemade fettuccine, and it tastes amazing, and it's super, super filling compared to the store-bought because it's still full of nutrition, especially if you home meal. Got ravioli attachments. There's just a lot of different things you can make, and it's really, really, really simple. Look how much that stretched out. And you can stretch it, roll it some more, get it a little thinner if you want. I think this is about right for lasagna. I don't want it too thin. I might roll it one more time. And you can use your other attachments if you want to help you handle the dough. Like, for example, the ravioli attachment. It's got these wheels on it. You can use that to help you feed the dough in. Get it all straight. Start rolling. Roll to the side here. But I find it's easier without it. I work better with my hands than with the equipment. So then when you've got it at length, you can just lay it out. Figure out how long you want them. And cut them. So as you can see, our different kinds of noodles. It's important to make sure they're totally dry before you cook them. You want to make sure they're stiff. We're going to go ahead and let these finish drying and then I'll show you. But you want them stiff, just like the store-bought noodles. You want them, at least before you put them in the water, they need to at least be leathery because you don't want them to fall apart and dissolve. But once they're leathery, you can cook them, but it's better if you go ahead and just let them dry all the way. So I'm going to let these dry and we're going to cook them this evening.